MLS Cup is here, the one-game championship for MLS. The Portland Timbers taking on Atlanta United FC. And our next guest is an MLS icon, a former member of the U.S. men's national team as well, and a soccer analyst for ESPN. It is our great pleasure to open up the Johnny Carson curtains here and welcome on my good friend, Taylor Twellman. Taylor, good morning.
DA, what's going on, my friend? Long time.
I know, man. How's it going?
I know, it's been a long time, dude. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? We always will chat over text message or social media or whatnot, but I haven't actually had a chance to catch up with you in person. Everything good with you? Season's been good?
Yeah, you know, MLS season, the soccer season's a long season, my friend. Like, you know this, covering all the sports. Football is like a sprint compared to what we do, and even the 82-game NHL, NBA season just, it's a long season, but it's coming to an end here in Major League Soccer, and also with some excitement on some levels that U.S. Soccer's hired a new coach. It's ever-ending. It's 365 days a year, my friend.
Let me ask you about Greg Berhalter getting the call. This took over a year for U.S. men's national team to decide who was going to be the head coach. There's a lot of pressure and scrutiny on this. You have been very openly critical of the duration of the time of this search. At the end of the day, do you think they got it right?
I do by the criteria that they've laid out, right? So U.S. Soccer coming out and saying they wanted, you know, and the press conference today is going to have a huge, I think, explanation to the, you know, how the process went about. Yes, I do. I think Greg Berhalter's young. He's energetic. He's very meticulous. He's very detail-oriented. He's done a phenomenal job with a less expensive, for lack of a better phrase, roster in Columbus and gotten them to play at a high level so he can execute a game plan. But, DA, the reality is this, is that he's still in the coaching world. He's young. He's inexperienced. First time with the International way. And for the listeners at home, when you're a club coach, you work with them all day, same players. All day, every day, back to back. At most, in one calendar year, Greg Berhalter will be in camp on a field with his players 80 days at most. So he's got to be very good at being able to bring a group together in 3 days and getting them ready to play a game, and I think ultimately that's why he got the job. But when you have the optics of it, DA, of Lopetegui, who went undefeated with Spain, Tata Martino, who was interested in the job, Juan Carlos Osorio, who was spoken to, and that will be a little bit, that's a little breaking news on your radio show. That will be announced today that they did speak to Mexico head coach Juan Carlos Osorio. The point is that the optics of this all puts needless amount of pressure on Greg Berhalter, and they didn't need to. Greg could have been hired 8 months ago, used the last 7-8 friendlies, gotten his feet wet, got a good understanding of the group, but instead they went about it this way. The only thing that matters now is results, and Greg's got a little bit more pressure on him than previous years because he needs to get him immediately.
So you were one of the strongest voices critical of the fact that U.S. did not qualify for the World Cup, and you were all over ESPN, and I think your voice was maybe loudest in this. When you look at where the U.S. men's national team is, do you feel like with this hire that men's national team fans, American soccer fans, should feel like, okay, this is the right step in the right direction, or are you still skeptical that they can get to where they need to get?
Skeptical. And it has nothing to do with Greg Berhalter. I'm skeptical. You know, we interviewed Michael Parkhurst, a former national team player and captain of Atlanta United right now, and he said, and he played for Greg Berhalter, and I said, what's your biggest concern about Greg Berhalter? And he said, well, Greg's got to get the guys believing in playing for the red, white, and blue again. Like, when you hear that soundbite, you're like, wait, what? What does that mean? So it actually has nothing to do with Greg Berhalter. My skepticism still relies on how many Americans are playing at a high level around the world? How many Americans are playing consistently in Major League Soccer? You could have the best coach in the world, but if you don't have the players, that's not good enough either. So my skepticism still remains. And I've actually said this over the last 48 hours. I've texted with Greg Berhalter. He is a former teammate of mine, and we've had some good conversations, but that's why he was hired. So if he comes out and they win a ton of games and the young Americans are playing, well, DA, my skepticism turns very quickly. But if you call me a year from now and we're still talking about whether or not anyone else is playing in Europe other than Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie, well, then all of a sudden I'm sitting there saying, I don't care who your coach is, where are the players coming from? So I think the American fan will see it from results and less so just from saying, hey, we just hired Greg Berhalter.
ESPN soccer analyst Taylor Twellman, former U.S. men's national team member as well, joining us here on the DA Show on CBS Sports Radio. You've also discussed openly concussion research, intelligence, protocol, and you're very vocal about this on social media. You've dealt with that in your past as well athletically. Where do you feel we are at with concussions and society at large, football, soccer, and other athletics?
We have the resources and tools that you and I growing up we never had. So the resources and tools is exponentially better, more detailed, and yet you can still have the same resources and tools, but what do you do with the resources and tools? And for the listeners at home, let me ask you this. How many players in the NFL go through concussion rehab or the concussion protocol, and what's the percentage of them that are automatically back within 6 days for the next game?
Pretty quick.
And yet scientists, doctors will tell us, the percentage of that should be a lot lower than it is if we're properly rehabbing it. So, listen, protocols are fine. I do think right now, DA, too many leagues in our country are hiding behind a protocol. Protocol is not, it doesn't mean anything if you don't do it right. So I still think we're not completely looking at it the right way, and now you're starting to see the NHL have some real, optical issues because people are really calling it out. Former players are saying there is none, and so it is what it is. The World Cup in 2014 in the final, Christoph Kramer got knocked out. FIFA didn't even look at it. FIFA's been sitting on their hands on a lot of issues, and until FIFA addresses it, our sport, soccer, football around the world, is going to still hide behind a protocol. And the reality is I think U.S. Soccer and Major League Soccer could lead that charge, and they may. But the fact that we have all these resources and tools and we're still making bad decisions, I'd argue it's worse.
Taylor Twellman joins us this morning on the show. MLS Cup is coming up on Saturday. Atlanta United, you called the first leg of the Red Bulls against Atlanta United in that last championship round, and you were at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This game will be there as well. I mean, just how crazy is it? How awesome is it? There are 70,000 people that show up weekly to go watch Atlanta United, a soccer team, in the ATL, and they'll do it again on Saturday.
DA, I show up every time in Atlanta, Uber or cab driver, and they're arguing with me about something I said. and then the best part about this, DA, is then I'll argue with them about something about SEC football, and they blow me off. They're like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't care about that. Or the Falcons or anything. In Arthur Blank, to this day, and this isn't, he did his only in-game interview for the MLS All-Star game that he's ever done, never done Falcons, anything. And I put him on the spot, and good on him for answering. I said, what's a better experience? And right now, what would you redo? And he goes, Atlanta United blows the Falcons out of the water.
Wow.
From the entire weekend, from everything. He said, it is shocking to me that he didn't know this 20 years ago. And I said, I think you're being unfair, but the reality is, look at the Falcons-Ravens game from the past weekend. DA, you and I could have showed up, paid $10 and got in.
Yep.
Like, it just, the entire city, Alabama, Georgia, SEC championship game, in leading news stations is Atlanta United hosting MLS Cup. I'll leave it at that. And it's not, the best part about it for me, DA, is it's not me having to make it up. It's just fact. There's no opinion there. But I love landing and the Uber driver looking at me, call me a complete idiot because I said the right back of Atlanta United's first touch isn't good enough. That's when you know you've made it.
That is awesome. For all of us MLS supporters, that is so cool. What a great sea change. And you are teaming up with Allstate Insurance and the Allstate All-America Cup coming up at the MLS All-Star Game in Orlando. Another wonderful MLS city coming up next summer. And you're going to be working with other U.S. men's national team members, U.S. women's national team members as well, looking at the elite high school soccer players. Talk to us about this project.
It's awesome, DA. You know, with the Christian Pulisics and the Weston McKennies of the world, you can see that soccer is just players are getting better a lot earlier in their career. So Today we announced the first 150 high school junior soccer players that will be named All-State All-Americans. We'll name another 100 players later this spring. 80 of those players will come to the All-State All-America Cup during MLS All-Star Week in Orlando. I'll be one of those coaches. But for me, it's about motivating younger players, D.A. You and I both know if you're playing a sport and you're a freshman and now you hear about this All-State All-Americans are now in juniors, and these are the game changers in the sport. So it just was a natural fit for me to be involved, and anytime I can coach these kids or be around them, I love staying younger, so to speak, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Taylor Twellman, ESPN soccer analyst and truly an American icon, and specifically a fashion icon, joining us here on the show. TT, it is great to finally catch up again. I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
D.A., great hearing your voice, my man.
You
Proud
too,
of you.
Back at you, my man. Back at you. Taylor Twellman joining us this morning here on the show. Good stuff.